Hey guys, tonight we're stepping straight into the shimmering heat of ancient Nubia. Yes, the kind of dry, sun-bleached heat that makes you question every life choice that led you outside. You're standing there, squinting at a marketplace that hums with slow, sleepy motion, and you can already feel the desert deciding whether to toast you lightly or thoroughly. And honestly, you probably won't survive this without a cooling jar of your own, so good thing you're about to learn how they made them. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Tell me in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is for you right now. It's always fun seeing our little sleepy world map fill up. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The sand shifts under your sandals as you step deeper into the market, each grain radiating the kind of warmth that feels personally offended by your presence. The air smells faintly of baked clay, sun-dried dates, and the river breeze trying its absolute best but failing to cool anything down. Merchants lean lazily against stall posts, waving palm fronds like they're conducting a very slow orchestra. It's the perfect setting to learn why Nubian potters were wizards of evaporative cooling long before anyone uttered the words eco-friendly. A mainstream historical fact drifts into your mind. Nubia, nestled along the Nile's southern stretches, was a crossroads of trade linking sub-Saharan Africa with Egypt. Goods, stories, and techniques flowed through this region for thousands of years, and pottery, especially cooling jars, was one of the specialties people traveled far to buy. You pass a trader bragging loudly that his family has sold water jars to caravans heading into the desert for generations, though the confidence in his voice suggests he'd brag even if he'd only learned pottery yesterday. Light joke number one. As you weave between the stalls, you feel the rough texture of a jar displayed on a low table. It's cool, genuinely cool, in the middle of a furnace disguised as a marketplace. That's the magic of porous clay. When water seeps to the outer surface and evaporates, it steals a tiny bit of heat, leaving the water inside refreshingly chill. Nature's air conditioning, minus the noise and electricity bill. One shopper taps a jar with exaggerated seriousness, pretending to judge the craftsmanship, but you're pretty sure he has no idea what he's doing. Light joke number two. You overhear a strange tidbit. One vendor swears that adding finely ground ostrich egg shell helps jars stay cooler longer. Another insists the man is completely wrong and only uses it to keep up his mysterious potter persona. Historians still argue whether Nubian artisans actually mixed unusual additives into their clay or if it was just marketplace gossip meant to lure curious buyers like you. A potter beckons you closer, amused at the way you're sweating like someone who just discovered the sun for the first time. He lifts the jar, tips it slightly, and lets you hear the soft slosh inside, water that's been sitting for hours, yet remains surprisingly refreshing. You take a cautious sip, half expecting desert mirage trickery, but no, it's cool enough to make you sigh dramatically. The potter chuckles and mutters something that probably translates to city people. Light joke number two. As you continue wandering, you notice patterns carved in some jars, wavy lines mimicking the Nile's flow, geometric dots that feel almost hypnotic. The symbols aren't just decorative, they help grip the jar when hands are wet or dusty. A small boy demonstrates this by intentionally almost dropping one. His mother's look of horror suggests that even in ancient Nubia, kids were testing gravity for fun. Light joke number three. You linger a moment longer, letting the scene settle into you. The rust-red glow of amphoras stacked like sleepy sentinels, the muted chatter of shoppers, the faint hiss of wind drifting from the river. This is where your journey into Nubian cooling magic begins. Right here, in the shimmering stillness of a desert morning that refuses to hurry for anyone. You leave the warm buzz of the marketplace behind and follow a narrow footpath leading toward the Nile, guided mostly by the promise of shade and the faint, hopeful idea that maybe, just maybe, the river breeze will finally remember its job. The potter who gave you that cool sip earlier strolls ahead, waving for you to keep up. You try, but the sand has the consistency of flour that's been sitting in the sun too long, swallowing each step like it's mildly disappointed in your effort. The riverbank opens before you in a wide, shimmering curve. Papyrus rustles softly, birds skim the surface, and clay, good workable clay, waits beneath the shallow water like a treasure only artisans bother to notice. The potter crouches, digs his hand into the riverbed, and lifts a dripping handful, letting it ooze between his fingers with the slow confidence of someone who has done this more times than he has eaten breakfast. A mainstream historical fact hums in your mind. Nubian potters often sourced clay directly from Nile floodplains, where mineral-rich silt replenished itself each year. The river didn't just give them water, it gave them raw material for craft, trade, and daily life. You feel the weight of that continuity as the potter motions for you to try collecting clay yourself. You step forward, reach into the cool water, and scoop. The clay squishes through your fingers with a satisfying softness, like nature's stress ball, if nature had a thing for making you slip and almost fall face first into the river. The potter laughs, not even trying to hide it, and mutters something that probably means tourists. Light joke number 1. As you gather more clay, he explains, slowly, patiently, that not all river mud is worthy of becoming a jar that can keep water cool for hours. Some clay is too sandy, some too sticky, some holds cracks like it's collecting them as a hobby. He shows you how he tests it, rolling a small coil, bending it gently, checking whether it breaks cleanly or tears like old bread. You nod sagely, pretending you really understand the difference, even though you're pretty sure your piece cracked simply because it wanted to embarrass you. A quirky tidbit emerges as he pulls out a small pouch hanging from his belt. Inside are odd things: crushed granite dust, a bit of burnt plant ash, and something that looks suspiciously like powdered date pits? He sprinkles a pinch into one batch of clay and whispers, "For strength." Then he winks, as if revealing ancient gossip. Some say the additives help the jars stay porous enough to cool water without leaking. Others claim potters used them because they just enjoyed experimenting when no one was watching. Historians still argue whether Nubian artisans systematically used tempering materials or whether these mixtures were just personal quirks passed quietly through families. You continue shaping little test coils, trying to match the potter's fluid movements. Spoiler, you don't. He makes his look like a perfectly rolled rope. Yours looks like something a tired camel might step on. Light joke number 2. Still, he pats your shoulder, reassuring you that every apprentice starts this way. You're not entirely convinced he's not joking, but you appreciate the gesture. He stands, gestures downstream, and leads you to a patch where the soil is slightly redder. Different clay, hotter firing, stronger walls. You start noticing how the riverbank is basically a painter's palette: beige, rust, charcoal, gray. Each variation becomes a different cooling jar type, tuned for thinness, porosity, and durability. This is the stuff the marketplace merchants brag about, pretending they understand it all, while actual potters quietly roll their eyes behind their stalls. A soft breeze finally picks up, carrying the scent of river reeds. You breathe deeply, grateful for even a tiny break from the heat. The potter hands you a heavy clay bundle wrapped in woven reed strips, your contribution to today's work. You try lifting it like he does, smooth and steady, but end up hugging it awkwardly like someone trying not to drop a sleepy cat. Light joke number 3. With the clay secured, you turn back toward the village. The path looks a little shorter now, the sun a little kinder, the marketplace waiting with its lazy hum. Soon you'll be in the shade of a workshop, watching these raw clumps transform into the jars that kept desert travelers sane. For now, though, you trudge onward, clay in hand, river breeze fading behind you, as the promise of cool craftsmanship draws you forward. You return to the village with your awkwardly hugged bundle of clay, and the moment you step into the potter's workshop, the heat shifts from merciless outdoor grill to cozy bread oven ambiance, which is somehow both comforting and mildly threatening. Shade stretches across the packed earth floor, and the air smells like wet clay, old smoke, and the kind of patience only artisans possess. You set your clay down with a thud that echoes far louder than intended. Several potters look over, eyebrows raised. You give a tiny wave, the international sign for please pretend you didn't see that. The main workspace feels like a slow heartbeat, steady movements, soft chatter, the circular rhythm of a potter's wheel spinning under practiced hands. One artisan nods for you to come closer. He's shaping a cooling jar using the coil method, building the vessel layer by layer like a sleepy spiral staircase. His fingers smooth each coil into the next, erasing the seams until the jar becomes one seamless form. You watch, mesmerized, realizing quickly that he makes it look far easier than it is, like someone casually folding fitted bed sheets. Light joke number 1. A mainstream historical fact slips into your thoughts. Many Nubian potters worked without fast-spinning wheels for much of antiquity, relying on slow wheels or simple hand-building techniques. These methods weren't signs of technological limitation, but choices that gave them better control over wall thickness and porosity, both of which determined how effectively a jar could cool water. The thinner and more consistent the walls, the better the evaporative magic worked. You're invited to try shaping a small jar. Small in this context, meaning less likely to collapse under your incompetence. You sit at the wheel, press your wet hands onto the clay, and immediately watch it wobble like it's reconsidering its entire life path. The potter calmly reaches over, stabilizing the lump, reminding you gently that the clay follows your confidence, which is a problem because your confidence just slipped off the wheel and rolled somewhere under a table. Still, you keep trying. Your jar begins to rise, slowly, unevenly, resembling something between a cup and a slightly concerned pumpkin. The potter doesn't say a word, he simply nods, the kind of nod that says, yes, that is technically vessel-shaped. Light joke number 2. Around you, artisans carve patterns using simple bone and reed tools. You notice repeating motifs, zigzags, dotted lines, river waves. Each has purpose, decoration, grip enhancement, even airflow optimization in some designs. One potter explains that too smooth walls can cause uneven evaporation, while subtly textured surfaces breathe better. You file that away, pretending you understood it instantly. A quirky tidbit surfaces as another artisan shows you a jar painted with a faint reddish wash. He claims this finish keeps flies away. Another potter across the room loudly disagrees, insisting it's purely ornamental. A third chimes in, saying his grandmother told him the color wards off jealous spirits who hate stylish pottery. Historians still argue whether Nubian color treatments had practical cooling benefits or were mainly aesthetic expressions tied to community identity. As your workshop lesson continues, someone offers you a cup of cool water from a freshly made jar. You sip and feel the temperature difference again, that quiet, natural chill that seems impossible in this climate. The workshop chuckles when you close your eyes dramatically, savoring the shade, the water, the soft clatter of tools. Your jar, meanwhile, lists slightly to one side, like it's tired of standing up. Light joke number 3. The artisans begin smoothing their jars for drying, placing them on low racks where they'll firm up before firing. Your potter mentor gently moves your miniature creation to the rack. It sits proudly among the others, even if it looks like it's leaning over to ask the jar beside it for life advice. With your hands still coated in clay, you step out of the workshop. The light outside feels softer now, the heat less aggressive. You've shaped something, uneven, lopsided, endearing, and learned firsthand the calm, deliberate movements behind every Nubian cooling jar. Ahead, the sky begins to warm with late afternoon amber, hinting at the kiln fires waiting to glow at dusk. You follow the gentle drift of voices toward the back of the village, where the air begins to smell faintly of smoke and river reeds. The sun has slid lower now, turning the world a soft copper, the kind of warm glow that makes everything look slightly magical, even the piles of firewood stacked like sleepy little fortresses. As you approach the kilns, you feel that familiar wave of heat rise again, but this time it carries purpose, like stepping into a room where everyone already knows what to do except you. The kilns themselves look ancient, rounded domes made of sun-baked mud brick, patched and repaired so many times they're practically historical diaries. A potter waves you over with a soot-smudged hand, his smile suggesting he's already predicting the moment you'll jump from the sudden heat blast. Spoiler, he's not wrong. A mainstream historical fact slides into your awareness. Nubians used updraft and pit kilns for centuries, choosing methods that gave them precise control over temperature and airflow. Even without modern thermometers, expert potters could judge heat by the color of the flame, the scent of the smoke, and the subtle hum of the kiln walls. Skills passed down like family secrets. You crouch beside one kiln, peering into the shadowy opening as someone tosses in a bundle of dried branches. Flames surge forward in a slow, curling wave, and you don't jump exactly, you react strategically. Light joke number 1. The potters laugh, but in that friendly, good-natured way, and one pats your shoulder like you've just passed an unofficial initiation ritual. As the jars from earlier, including your heroic, slightly confused-looking creation, are arranged near the kiln, you notice how carefully they're spaced. Too close, and they might fuse or crack. Too far, and the firing won't strengthen them properly. One artisan tells you that a jar's destiny is sealed in this moment. How porous it will be, how long it will cool water, how easily it will sing with that faint clay scent when filled. Cooling jars need that perfect balance of strength and breathability, a contradiction that only skilled firing can achieve. A quirky tidbit emerges as the potters adjust the airflow vents. One mutters that adding a pinch of ground acacia bark into the fire gives jars a sweeter, cooling spirit. Another rolls his eyes so dramatically you think he might fall over. A third potter insists it's purely tradition and has zero physical effect. Historians still argue whether these kiln additives genuinely altered the jar's microstructure or whether ancient artisans simply enjoyed small rituals that made tough work feel personal. As dusk deepens, the village gathers quietly around the firing area. Kiln work is slow, steady, and strangely communal. People bring mats, sit on them like they're settling in for a casual neighborhood watch party, and trade soft jokes. Kids chase each other at the edge of the glow, pretending the kilns are dragon caves, though one adult firmly clarifies that no dragons are allowed to help fire pottery anymore. Light joke number 2. Your potter mentor hands you a long stick used to adjust the wood in the kiln. You poke once, gently, like the fire might judge you. Then, finding unexpected courage, you shift the log more confidently. The flames crackle in approval. At least that's how you choose to interpret it. The potter nods, impressed or just entertained. It's hard to tell. Night settles with a blanket of violet sky. Stars prick through the dusk one by one as the heat from the kiln rises in shimmering waves. You realize how rhythmic the firing process is, adding wood, adjusting vents, listening for changes in the draft. Even the crack of burning branches feels like a slow heartbeat syncing with the night. Then comes a moment of collective quiet. A potter opens the kiln briefly, checking the color of the jars inside. They glow an otherworldly orange, like suns trapped in clay. Your slightly leaning jar stands there proudly, now looking more like a sleepy friend warming himself by the fire. You can't help but smile. Your first creation is surviving the trial by flame. A little later, someone passes around cups of warm, spiced beverage, part tea, part something you hope is safe, while the older potters tell half-serious stories about jars that cracked on purpose to avoid being bought by picky merchants. Light joke number 3. You sip slowly, enjoying the calm chaos of the kiln site, shadows dancing, fire humming, voices drifting like low wind. By the time the firing nears completion, the village seems softer, wrapped in the glow of tradition. You feel it settle into your skin, too, the slow craft, the shared effort, the quiet pride. Soon the jars will cool overnight, ready for the markets next morning. But for now, the kiln breathes steady and strong, and the desert night watches over it with a gentle shimmer. By the time morning light spills across the village, the kiln has cooled to a gentle warmth, its harsh orange glow traded for soft, earthy calm. You approach it with a quiet sort of curiosity, like checking on a friend after a long night. The potters open the kiln with practiced motions, releasing a faint breath of clay-scented air. Inside, the jars sit transformed, stronger, lighter in color, and carrying that subtle matte finish that marks a good evaporative vessel. Your own lopsided creation stands there too, leaning just slightly, as if stretching after a long sleep. You can't help but grin. It survived, and that counts for something. One of the potters hands it to you proudly, saying with a wink that every artisan remembers their first eccentrically shaped masterpiece. Light joke number 1. With the jars bundled into reed baskets, you follow the group back to the marketplace. The desert is already waking up, merchants yawning, goats complaining about everything, and the air shimmering with early heat that promises to get bossy by noon. Stalls begin to open, wooden counters unfolding like sleepy wings. You help unload the jars and arrange them with the others, forming neat rows that catch the light just right. A mainstream historical fact slips into your thoughts. Nubian markets were famous for their pottery stalls, serving travelers, caravan traders, and locals who depended on cooling jars as daily tools. These jars weren't luxury goods, they were essential survival items. In regions where temperatures could soar beyond comfort, evaporative cooling was as vital as shade or a strong river breeze. A buyer approaches, lifting a jar gently and tapping it near the rim. You learn quickly this isn't random. Seasoned customers test the ceramic's ring to hear if it fired evenly. A clean, resonant tone signals strength. A dull thud? Well, let's just say it becomes a flower pot. You try tapping a jar yourself, pretending you know exactly what sound to listen for. The potter gives you an encouraging nod, though you suspect you're one tap away from exposing your total incompetence. Light joke number 2. The market grows busier. You watch the potters interact with customers, calm, patient, confident. They explain how to season a new jar with water, how to position it in the shade for best cooling, and how the porous walls help lower the water's temperature by letting moisture slowly evaporate. You realize that each sale is more than a transaction. It's the passing of knowledge, tradition, and a bit of desert wisdom. Then comes a quirky tidbit. One merchant insists that if you whisper your name into a jar before the first filling, it will remember your thirst and cool the water faster. Another merchant scoffs loudly, saying the only thing jars remember is whether someone stored onions in them last season. Historians still argue whether Nubian potters genuinely believed in such rituals or whether they were simply delightful market theatrics that made the shopping experience more fun. You take a break under a palm-thatched awning. The marketplace hums with slow, comforting energy, voices drifting, pottery clinking, donkeys braying like they're auditioning for something. Someone hands you a cup filled from one of the freshly fired jars. You sip. The water is cool, surprisingly, impossibly cool for a desert morning. You let it sit on your tongue a moment longer, savoring the quiet shock of refreshment. Nearby, your own jar finds a new home with a young traveler. They examine its slight lean, smile, and say it has character. You beam like a proud parent sending their kid to pottery college. As the sun climbs higher, the colors of the market sharpen. Deep reds of amphoras, pale tans of woven mats, the glint of copper bracelets. You feel yourself settling into the rhythm of the place, the easy conversations, the soft scrape of clay against wood, the rustle of palm leaves overhead. The journey that began with scorching heat and awkward clay hugging has led you here, to a moment of calm in a vibrant desert world.
And now, the wind down begins. The marketplace softens around you as the day stretches quietly forward, its sounds blending into a warm, steady hum. You step back from the buzz of customers and find a small patch of shade beneath a woven canopy. The air here feels slower, thicker, as if the desert itself has decided to pause just long enough for you to breathe without rushing. You let your eyes trace the simple shapes of the cooling jars stacked neatly nearby. Their surfaces hold tiny flecks of color from the firing, each one subtly different, each one shaped by hands that worked patiently through the rhythm of yesterday's heat. The jars seem almost alive in their stillness, gently glowing under the daylight, as if they remember the fire that strengthened them and the river clay that once held them soft. Around you, voices grow quieter, folding into low, soothing murmurs. A breeze drifts in from the river, carrying a hint of coolness that brushes your skin like a soft reminder to relax just a little more. You settle into that feeling, letting your shoulders loosen, letting your breathing slow into long, calm waves. Even the heat feels gentler now, wrapping you in a warm, drowsy blanket rather than pressing down. It's easy to imagine the entire marketplace swaying with the rhythm of the midday hush, jars and stalls and distant dunes drifting into a single, peaceful landscape. You close your eyes for a moment, letting your mind wander through the steps you've taken, gathering clay by the Nile, shaping it in the shade, tending the kiln through dusk, waking to the jar's quiet transformation. Each memory softens, blurring at the edges like footprints fading in warm sand. And slowly, gently, you allow yourself to drift with them, into stillness, into quiet, into rest.